into the GOAT Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Neander. All right, week 9, here we go. The preview show. This is part 2. If you missed it, we released part 1 yesterday. Go ahead and check it out if you're looking for information on any of the early games. That's the Houston and Jacksonville game. Got the Redskins and Bills, Vikings and Chiefs, Jets and Dolphins, Bears and Eagles, Colts, Steelers, and the Titans and the Panthers. So if you're looking for any information on those games, go ahead and check out part 1 of our week 9 preview show. We're going to go ahead and get started with part 2. So we have all the late games. It's going to be a pretty quick episode today. So we're going to start in Oakland, where the Detroit Lions are taking on the Raiders. Both teams surprisingly decent. 3-1 for the Lions, 3-4 for the Raiders. I think better than expected for sure after the Antonio Brown saga. But we got a couple teams that are playing pretty well right now that actually have some weapons for fantasy purposes. It doesn't seem like that in the last couple of years. Not too many weapons anyway. So, Matthew Stafford's probably been one of the biggest surprises. He's been, a top 12 quarterback a number of times this year. It's another good matchup, and he just seems to be, finding his receivers with regularity. The fact they lost Kerryon Johnson is definitely, helping Stafford's numbers a little bit. He's throwing the ball a little bit more. They're not depending on the run just because they really can't. And they're making it work. So I really like playing your Lions this week. So, I think Stafford is definitely going to be in line for another QB1 type of week. I won't be surprised at all if he winds up as, the QB 6 or 7, somewhere like that. And I think that, depending on the quarterbacks that you're looking at playing, if it's an option to play Matt Stafford instead of your quarterback, it's very likely he's going to score more points, depending on who you have. But at this point, someone's probably got him scooped up. He's probably sitting on someone's bench if he's not starting already. But it's definitely worth taking a look. Now with the running backs, I know we got burned last week. Anybody that played Ty Johnson, myself included, definitely has a bad taste in their mouth. But, the fact is you got to let that go, right? Fantasy football is a week-by-week game for the most part. And you really need to be able to separate, your emotions and when you get burned from the matchups and what's actually going on here. So, the issue was that, last week, Trey Carson came in and took a lot of the carries away from Ty Johnson that we thought Ty Johnson was going to have. It was still close to a 50-50 split as far as playing time goes. But, we were just expecting Ty Johnson to walk in and be the number 1 back to get 15-20 carries and get most of the receiving work. And it didn't work out that way because Trey Carson came kind of out of nowhere and took a lot of that work from him. Well, Trey Carson is questionable for this game with a hamstring injury. So the fact is that, unless something happens, I know that they just worked out Jay Ajayi on, Friday, but that's not going to make an impact for this week. The fact is, with Carson limited, Ty Johnson is probably in line for a running back 1 workload. Now, believe me, I totally understand every hesitancy towards playing Ty Johnson if you have him, if you picked him up last week. But just know that this week's probably going to be a lot better week for Ty Johnson. I'm not saying he's going to have a huge week, but if Ty Johnson scores, 13 to 15 points in a PPR format, I'm not going to be surprised in the least. That's probably where I'd project him at, in the 12 to 13 point range for this week, assuming that Trey Carson is limited. If Trey Carson's out, I think for sure he'll get close to those numbers. So just remember, you got to let last week go sometimes. So Ty Johnson, you got to forgive and forget, move on. And I think you can play Ty Johnson this week. You're playing Kenny Golladay. That's great. But are you playing Marvin Jones? I think you should play Marvin Jones in this matchup. The boom potential is too high for Marvin Jones to be sitting on your bench against the Oakland Raiders. And I really think that you got to make room for him in your lineup, in your flex spot probably this week, or even as a wide receiver too. Just because, I know that he disappears some weeks and then you have big Golladay weeks. I actually think this is going to be one of those weeks where both Golladay and Kenny Jones, where both Golladay and Marvin Jones have a really, really serviceable week, if not a very good week for both of them. So there you go. TJ Hawkinson, I really wouldn't recommend to play him unless you have to. I mean, the potential's always there. Oakland has been very bad against the tight ends. They're near the bottom of the league. So this is a matchup where you can say, hey, I'm playing the matchup. I think that he can do well against Oakland because Oakland is not good against tight ends. But, yeah, I'd probably be playing like a Jonnu Smith or, a Darren Fells. One of these guys that maybe were picked up off of waivers, I'd probably play over TJ Hawkinson in this matchup. So, yeah, I'd leave him on the bench if you have the option. He's going to have some opportunities. We know that. But I'd probably still leave him on my bench. Oakland Raiders. Well, with Oakland, it's been pretty surprising actually how fantasy viable they've been throughout the season. So, Derek Carr's been one of the more popular streamers for the last few weeks. I think that continues this week. I think he's at home in a okay matchup. It's not a great matchup by any means. Detroit's a pretty decent defense, but they are missing their standout safety, Tracy Walker. So there's some stuff going on there too. We'll see what happens with them, but I think you can play Derek Carr and assume that he's going to be, a pretty serviceable streamer, 250 and 2. I think you're going to feel good about playing Derek Carr. Go ahead and play Josh Jacobs. If you're a Josh Jacobs owner, you probably have to play him, honestly. But definitely play him this week. He's in line for some good work this week, so I think you're going to feel good about where he winds up this week. Tyrell Williams, I know he's a touchdown machine. So what do we do with Tyrell Williams? He's not getting huge amounts of work. That being said, he's performing basically every week that he's in there, right? If he's playing, he almost always scores a touchdown. I don't have him ranked as high as a lot of the other, experts that are out there doing rankings. But I completely understand the want to play Tyrell Williams just because the nose for the end zone has been, you can't deny it. I mean, these guys getting in the end zone almost every week he's playing. So I think if you're looking at playing him as a wide receiver 3 or a flex play, I completely understand, and I guess I, reluctantly have to agree with it, right? So, yeah. Go ahead. Hunter Renfrow, another interesting PPR, kind of a play. And he had, kind of his first breakout week last week. So we'll see if that continues. But I'm going to leave him either on the free agent wire or on my bench for another week. I don't think he has to be rostered, let alone started. He definitely doesn't have to be started. And, if he does it for another week, yeah, maybe I'll think about putting him on my bench and stashing him there. But I need to see some consistency there. It's been really the Darren Waller show, the tight end. He's been getting the huge amount of targets basically week in and week out, and until that changes, I don't know if there's enough targets for Hunter Renfrow to also have fantasy viability along with Waller and Tyrell Williams. So, and I'm going to hold off on Hunter Renfrow just a little while in a game that I don't know. I don't know what I expect here. I feel like it's going to be a high-scoring game, honestly. I really feel like it's going to be an over 50, kind of overall point scored game. So I just think that your fantasy players are going to have pretty good outcomes here. I just have a good feeling about your fantasy assets in this game. So go ahead and fire up your Lions, fire up your Raiders, all right? Let's move on. Let's keep it on the West Coast here. We're going to go to Seattle where the Buccaneers are going to take on the Seahawks. So, a lot to think about in this game here. Tampa Bay on the road. Winston has, been so up and down. The numbers, the interceptions, the turnovers have been, really, frightening. But he still has the touchdowns and the yardage to, have decent games. So, for me, on the road, even against a Seattle defense that hasn't been very good this year, I don't want to play Jameis Winston this week. So I'm going to recommend keep Jameis Winston on the bench. And believe me, I don't want to say that. I've got a lot of Chris Godwin and Mike Evans shares out there in the world. And I need them to do a lot this week. So I'm hoping that Winston at least puts up some numbers. But for me, I really don't want to bet on that. And if he was on my roster, I'd be looking to pivot away from Winston this week. Just a feeling I have. I don't think you can play either of the running backs right now. Ronald Jones, it looked like for a couple of weeks, a few weeks ago, 4 or 5 weeks ago, that it was going to happen, right? Looked like he was turning the corner, maybe going to become the number one back and kind of take over the workload. And then it just never happened. Every time, Ronald Jones or Peyton Barber seems to take the lead in that, backfield, it just doesn't happen. So, No, I'm not playing any Buccaneers running backs. I'm not really worried about stashing them or keeping them at this point. Um, you know, at this point, you're definitely going to play Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. There's too much boom potential every week. We've seen, it feels like one of them has had like a 35 plus point week almost every week of the season, right? Um, Almost every week, one of them's putting up a monster game, and typically, the other one has been okay, but they really haven't had a game where they both kind of go off. And I don't think this is going to be the game where that happens. So I think you have to play both of them and hope you have the one that has the big game. I really think it's going to go back to Godwin this week. So you've seen it be, a little more Mike Evans the last couple of weeks, and I think you're going to see the shift back to Chris Godwin. So I am expecting Godwin to score a little bit more than Mike Evans, but I think they're both going to have a decent game. But I don't see either one of them having one of those, go off type of games. Looks like O.J. Howard is going to be out again. So Cameron Brate owners, yeah, you can definitely play Cameron Brate if you need a streaming tight end. Go ahead with Cameron Brate. We all know that Jameis Winston likes to look for him, especially in the end zone. That's really been his biggest asset to Jameis Winston has been his red zone threat, playmaking ability. So if you're playing Cameron Brate, just know that it's pretty much a touchdown dependent play. You're probably not going to get a ton of volume from Cameron Brate. So yeah. As far as your Seahawks go, well, first, the Seahawks, if you didn't hear, did claim Josh Gordon off waivers. I definitely don't expect that to be any kind of. I don't expect him to play this week. I don't think he is playing, so it doesn't matter. But I'll just bring it up because I think it's awesome. What an interesting place for him to wind up, and I hope he gets healthy in the next couple of weeks, and we get to see what happens in this offense with him. But for now, we'll play with what we have. And listen, you're playing all your Seahawks, right? You're playing Russell Wilson, great. He's playing lights out, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. You're playing Chris Carson on volume, not only alone because he's playing pretty well, but certainly on volume. He's getting the ball a lot, and he's been a very valuable fantasy asset for you this year so far, especially with his draft position. He's just been really super consistent throughout the year, and you've been happy as a Chris Carson owner. So go ahead and play him. Rashad Penny looked really good last week with the work that he had. 8 carries, I think, 55 yards. But he's going to stay in that touch range, I expect, for right now. This team's playing well. They're 6-2. No need to mess with success. They got it going well with Carson. So I'm not ready to think about Penny yet as a flex play. So go ahead and steer away from Penny. You're playing Tyler Lockett. That's great. DK Metcalf had a couple of touchdowns last week. I know he didn't have really anything else, and that's scary. But I just think he's going to get more involved, honestly. I really do. I think that DK Metcalf is going to have a decent game in this game. And as a kind of outside flyer, I'm going to go ahead and put my weight behind DK Metcalf. I think he's going to have a good game this week. I think you should play him if you have. Find room for him in your lineup. And this is when I'm going to put my neck out there. I think he's going to have a good 12, 14-point week for DK Metcalf. So there you go. Hold me to it. We'll see what happens. Outside of that, you're really not playing any other Seahawks. There are no other receivers that have a lot of that give me any interest. And the tight end position, unfortunately, after Will Dissly went down, just hasn't really been something you want to go for with the Seahawks team. So still really unfortunate with that Dissly injury, but that's it. They're doing what they can with what they have. That's why they went and got Gordon. They need some weapons, and I guess we'll see what happens there, right? All right. Let's keep it rolling here. Let's go to Denver. Let's go to Mile High where the Cleveland Browns are going to take on the Denver Broncos. So, the Cleveland Browns are getting pretty lucky here. They've got this first-year kid playing for Denver. Not only first year, but I mean first game ever started. And that's going to be the interesting storyline here. I mean, trying to find his name. It's one of those names, right? It's like Brandon Thomas or, something like that. Sounds like every other young quarterback's name these days. But he's going to get a shot here, and I think that Cleveland on the road is going to take this game against, a rookie quarterback, a first-game starter. So, a lot of people are streaming Cleveland's defense. I think that makes that makes good sense. Even on the road, I think it makes good sense. So, we'll see what happens there. Baker Mayfield, I think you got to still sit him until you see him have a good game and maybe two. You just have to bite the bullet. I know you drafted him pretty high, probably within the first 6 quarterbacks, but at this point, I just don't think you can really have that confidence to play him out there. He's just killing you. So keep him on the bench. Nick Chubb, let it ride. You know that. Chubb's looked absolutely amazing. So don't worry about Nick Chubb. Go ahead and play. OBJ and Jarvis Landry. So OBJ, the fact is, he's on your team, and the playmaking ability makes you play him. And yeah, this matchup against Chris Harris is, again, it's another awful matchup, and they haven't really shown anything. So, I'm glad I don't have to make the OBJ decision right now. I don't have any shares of OBJ. I didn't really have a ton of faith in this super hyped up offense in the offseason, and I don't know. I know you're probably going to play OBJ, and that's just the feeling. If I had him, I'd probably do the same thing. But, man, another bad matchup, and he's probably going to have 10 points, 11 points. And there's nothing wrong with that for your wide receiver 3 or your flex that you drafted or you picked up on waivers. But obviously, your number 1 wide receiver or your number 2 draft pick, whichever way you look at it, you're hoping for a lot more. So, Jarvis Landry, I think now that's a guy you can play because you're expecting those wide receiver 3 flex numbers. So that's probably what you're going to get. You're probably going to get, 12 points, and that's what you should get out of him, right? If that's what you're expecting. So if that's what you're hoping for out of Jarvis Landry, go ahead, play him and get your 10, 12 points, and maybe you'll get a little bit more. But everyone else on that Cleveland Brown offense, really just Nick Chubb is the only must play for me. I don't have any other must plays on that team. So, I understand you're going to play OBJ and I understand why, but there we go. All right, the Denver Broncos. Are you playing any Broncos? I mean, I know they're at home, and this is going to sound bad for most of the owners here, but I think you can play both running backs, Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman. I think that Denver's obviously going to try to be running the ball, protect their young quarterback, and try not to put too much on him. Hopefully the defense keeps it close, and they won't have to make him throw the ball too much. With that being said, I think there's going to be a healthy dose of Phillip Lindsay with a nice spattering of Royce Freeman, and I think you're going to be able to play both of these guys. I don't expect monster game out of either one of them, but I do expect them both to touch the ball enough that you can get what you need out of them. Just make sure you're not thinking about huge games from these guys, because I just don't know that I see it. I think if one of them has a big game, it would be Phillip Lindsay for sure. But we'll have to see. So I don't know. I'm not that hyped up about this game. That's kind of an ugly one in my opinion. But hey, you gotta figure out the ugly games also. The ugly games decide weeks sometimes, right? All right. Staying out west, man. We're going to San Diego. I keep doing that. It's been a couple of years, and I don't know what it is. My brain can't do it. The Los Angeles Chargers are going to be hosting the Green Bay Packers this week. The En Fuego Green Bay Packers at 7-1 coming to town. And man, so the big question here, of course, is Davante Adams. You're playing Aaron Rodgers. He's on fire. You're playing Aaron Jones. He's lighting it up, left, right, and center. Jamal Williams. All right, now, so there's our first question mark for Green Bay. The guy's finding the end zone a ton. He's only getting, a small portion of the work that Aaron Jones isn't taking, but it's proven to be enough. Part of that, I think, is Davante Adams being out. So there's a little bit of a lack of weapons for Aaron Rodgers to throw to, so he is checking the ball down a little bit more. They are using the running backs in these, kind of traditional wide receiver routes a little bit more often, and so you're seeing that with a little bit more Jamal Williams production. But, with how thin it gets at running back, if you've got injuries, if you've got, bye weeks, yeah, I do have, Jamal Williams in that, fringe RB2 conversation, just because of how much this offense is rolling and how many opportunities there are to score in this offense right now. So, You obviously are playing Aaron Jones, but I do think if you're a Jamal Williams owner, depending on your roster, that you absolutely can play Jamal Williams this week and expect RB3 numbers out of him with absolutely kind of low end RB2 upside. So depending on what your needs are, just expect that from Jamal Williams. Receiving options for Green Bay. If Devontae Adams looks good, and he practiced pretty much fully Thursday and Friday, so I have a feeling he's going to be playing. I think he's going to be good to go, and I think you're going to need to play him if he is active. Unfortunately, the 4:25 start time, you're going to have a backup option to pivot to. If you're planning on playing Devontae Adams, which means that he's still in your lineup after the 1 o'clock starts, then you need to have somebody else that's either at 4 o'clock, 8 o'clock, or Monday night. That one person that you can just pivot directly to if, just before game time they say Devontae Adams is not going to give it a go, then go ahead and make that pivot. It could be a Packer, it could be Geronimo Allison. I'd actually prefer Allen Lazard if you're going to pick, one of the Packers that are widely available. But there's other guys out there. Maybe a third string guy for New England is out there now. Josh Gordon is gone, so maybe Jacoby Myers, right? Maybe you're looking at the Ravens and maybe you play a Willie Snead, and these aren't great options, but I'm just saying it's just good to have someone to pivot to. You got options on Monday night too with the Giants. You can maybe pivot to Darius Slayton, even though Sterling Shepard is back. So. Just be ready, right? If you're planning on playing Devontae Adams, be ready. That's all I'm saying. Have your choices ready to go. Jimmy Graham, I'm not sure, man. I feel like every week people are saying to play Jimmy Graham, and I don't want to play Jimmy Graham ever, basically, unless that it was that 1 week where he had a good week, right? What am I missing here? Let me know what I'm missing. If you're a Jimmy Graham truther, a Jimmy Graham believer, I'm just not seeing it on the field. I'm not seeing it with Aaron Rodgers. He's been there a few years now. If he was going to be a really popular target for Rodgers, he already would be. So, I don't know, man. I don't know. All right, let's go to the Chargers here because there are some questions with the Chargers. I know they're at home, but I wouldn't be in a rush to play Phillip Rivers this week. If I'm looking for that streaming quarterback, I'd be pivoting away from Phillip Rivers, even though he's at home. I just think the Packers defense is going to be up to the challenge here, and LA's going to be playing from behind. They're going to be throwing the ball a little bit too much, and I think that Phillip Rivers could get a little turnover happy, and you might see a couple of interceptions in this game. So it's not that he's not going to have a decent game. It's going to be Phillip Rivers. It's going to be 200 and something, and probably 2 touchdowns, but maybe a couple of picks. So he just doesn't put him near the top of my streaming category list. So just know that. The running backs, man, Melvin Gordon, I really wish you had just kind of stayed away. And I only have a couple of shares of Austin Eckler, but it's just everything about the offense looked better with Austin Eckler in it, quite frankly. And now that you're back, it's like you're just making it all look ugly. It's like you're the friend in a friend group that nobody really liked, but you were around. Then all of a sudden you weren't. Everybody was thrilled about it. And now all of a sudden you're back. So no one's having fun with that. Just know that. But you're going to probably play both of these guys. Austin Eckler, the receiving work has still been there enough to the level that he has his value. You're still getting, for the most part, most of these games, 6, 7, 8 plus targets. With what he's been doing with those targets, you absolutely still keep him in your lineup. Now, this is PPR only. In a standard league, Eckler's value is basically, none at this point. Gordon's getting most of the carries. With the change at offensive coordinator, we don't know what's going to happen going forward. So I think you have to play both of these guys, but with a lot of those nervous, anxious feelings that they're just not going to have a great game. So I hate to break that to you. All right, your receivers for the Chargers. Yes, you're playing Keenan Allen. I think, yes, of course, you're playing Hunter Henry. Now, are you playing Mike Williams? I have him just outside that wide receiver 3 range for this week. So for me, no, I'm not playing Mike Williams. Now, is he playable? Yes, he is playable. He's going to have, 5, 6 targets probably. And any one of those could be a touchdown, when it's Mike Williams. They were there last year. They haven't been there this year, which means that maybe they're coming, right? We know that's like the law of averages. If a guy is probably going to score 8 touchdowns and he only scored 2 so far, then hey, it's not guaranteed, but it's likely that they're going to start scoring in the back half, and that can happen with Mike Williams. I just don't think it's going to be this week. So for me, I'm leaving Mike Williams on my bench. There you go. All right, let's go to the night games. The first one, man, I really love this game. I'm so glad that it's the nationally televised game. I look forward to watching this one. The New England Patriots traveling to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. Both these teams playing well. We know the Patriots are undefeated, 8-0. The Ravens are 5-2, near the front of their division, and just playing well. But they've come back down to earth a little bit after those first couple of weeks, especially offensively for fantasy football purposes. They had Miami, Arizona, and that kind of just inflated their numbers for those first couple of weeks. But they did come back in a good way last week and play a really strong game in Seattle and win the game in Seattle. So, really happy about that just for Baltimore. Overall, as a team, let's talk about their fantasy assets, though. All right, so what do you think about Tom Brady's matchup this week? So for me, I understand he's on the road against Baltimore, and it's going to be, kind of a difficult game. I have Tom Brady just outside that quarterback one, ranking, right? I have him as QB 13 right now on the week, and so that puts you in a tough position. I think I'm starting Tom Brady because I think that's I feel like that QB 13, 14 is about as bad as it's going to get, and that's still kind of where I have him. And it's very possible that he's QB 1 this week. So I think you're playing Tom Brady. That's okay if you have a better option, which is possible. I do have a league where I have Dak Prescott also. I am playing Dak Prescott ahead of Tom Brady in that league, but then I am also playing Tom Brady in another league. So there you go. I have confidence in him. Running backs, I don't know. So now, all of a sudden, James White just popped up on the injury report yesterday out of nowhere with a toe issue. I hate those toe issues. My second guy dealing with a toe this year so far. So, but you got to worry about that. James White, I thought he was going to be definitely a really good PPR play, and now all of a sudden, now he's a little bit injured. So what does that do? I think I'm waiting for Sunday morning, to hear the reports. Unfortunately, again, this is a night game, so you're going to have to make your decisions. But, I think James White is somebody you have to be careful about, right? I don't know if he's going to be a good play this week anymore with that toe. Just wait to hear some more information. But as of right now, I'm leaning towards pivoting away from James White. Does that make me want to play Rex Burkhead? No, it doesn't make me want to play Rex Burkhead. It does, however, give me a little bit more interest in Sony Michel. He hasn't had any great weeks lately, but he has just been getting the ball a consistent amount and getting those consistent yards, 70, 80 plus yards. If he can start getting a little more involved in the passing game, those games can start turning into pretty fantasy viable games. He's still their goal line back, and that still has value in New England, even if they're going to sneak it with Brady. If they're going to sneak it with Brady, or they're going to maybe run it in with Brandon Bolden, there's still going to be opportunities on the goal line, and Sony Michel is a nice outside, kind of a play. I have him just outside RB2 range in my rankings. I have him ranked around number 26. So just know that's where I have him. I have him, just outside that range where he's going to get you points, but I don't expect him to have a really big week by any means. On the receiving end, for me, Julian Edelman is a must play, and I think Philip Dorsett is a guy you want to get into your lineup this week. So Josh Gordon's officially gone. Jacoby Myers is going to get a bump up in targets. We're going to see probably one or two guys that we've never heard of out there catching the ball. But I do think that Philip Dorsett is a guy that you want in your lineup this week. So just try to find a place to put him in there. I'm going to be surprised if he's not, 5-6 catch kind of guy this week. And I think the possibility of him finding the end zone is very, very strong this week. So I'm going to urge you to play Philip Dorsett. Let's move over to the Ravens. So a lot of questions here, right? Because they're at home and, they've got weapons. But New England has been absolutely shutting down everyone's weapons, no matter who they are, basically, right? So what are you going to do against this New England defense this week? Lamar Jackson owners are definitely sweating this game. There's no doubt about it. What is his line going to look like at the end of this game? What do you think? I think the rushing yards will be there, right? Because the pursuit will be there by the New England defense. I do think they're going to put pressure on Jackson. I definitely think he's going to bust out of the pocket at least a few times. And I'd be surprised if he's not easily over the 50, 60-yard rushing, plateau. So all of a sudden you're thinking, great, my floor is already great. 5, 6 points, maybe more. I love that start. And that's fine. But if the passing work adds up to 125 yards with 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions, are those 7 points enough to make it a good week? And is that the kind of week we expect from Lamar Jackson? I'm not sure. Marquise Hollywood Brown has not been practicing much this week. I don't think he's going to play, and at the end of the day, I think that's the big factor in Lamar Jackson's week. I think if he had all of his weapons fully healthy, that maybe he pulls out a pretty decent week. But without Marquise Brown, if he doesn't play, I think this is going to be a really tough matchup for Lamar Jackson. I wouldn't be playing him. I'm going to go ahead and put my recommendation as you're not going to want to play Lamar Jackson. I don't see him as a QB1 this week. So we'll see. On the other hand, if you're a Lamar Jackson owner and you play him and he winds up having a big game against the Patriots, man, does that give you a lot of confidence for the rest of the season. So that would feel good. Mark Ingram, I actually think you want to play Mark Ingram in this game. And here's why. Because I think that the Ravens are going to want to slow this game down. They're going to want to run the ball as much as humanly possible. And I think they're going to run the ball on first and second down on almost every drive in this game. So I do think there's going to be a lot of volume for Mark Ingram. And because of that, I do want to play him this week. So go ahead and play Mark Ingram. If Marquise Hollywood Brown was, active, I'd still have trouble telling you to play him. But I don't think there's any wide receivers on Baltimore that you can feel good about trying to, put out there. Mark Andrews here is the biggest question at tight end. And, the problem here is without Marquise Brown, are the New England Patriots going to make it a priority to shut down Mark Andrews? That seems to be their MO. They like to take away whoever the biggest weapon is on the field at the time. And if Hollywood Brown's not on the field, then for sure Mark Andrews is their number one weapon. So that's a question mark for me. The way tight ends are looking, you probably don't have a better option than Mark Andrews. So you're probably going to play him now. The thing with Mark Andrews was in a lot of cases he wasn't drafted or he was drafted super late as a number 2 tight end for someone's team. So maybe that person does have Evan Ingram. Maybe that person has, I don't know, Hunter Henry. And they got to think about, are they going to play Mark Andrews? Yes, for me, I still have Mark Andrews as a tight end 1 this week. So I think if you're a Mark Andrews owner, you should go ahead and play him. All right. This is a really interesting game overall. I love this game just for NFL purposes. I do think it's going to mess with a lot of people's fantasy teams because we're not sure what to expect. But, I just love this game overall. I'm looking forward to watching this game. All right. Monday night. Let's do it. Another manic Monday. Oh, yeah. NFC East matchup. Dallas Cowboys. New York Giants. There's going to be a lot of fantasy points put up in this game, folks. Just assume it. I know it's Monday night. Sometimes these, NFC East battles can get, a little grimy. But I'm telling you, the points are going to be there, especially for Dak Prescott. So, Cowboys are visiting the New York Giants this week. And Dak is going to have a game, buddies, let me tell you. So definitely play Dak Prescott everywhere you have him. I think you want to play every one of the Dallas Cowboys weapons there are. You're playing Dak Prescott. You're playing Zeke. You're playing Cooper. You know that. He's fully healthy. I don't want to say fully healthy. He's as healthy as he's been in a long time. Definitely fire up Michael Gallup. And go ahead and play Jason Witten. I really do think this is going to be like a 350-yard plus performance for Dak Prescott. There's going to be plenty to go around. And I think that unless you have a top, 6 tight end, that yes, I do think Jason Witten is going to be a tight end 1 this week. So that's where I have him around the tight end 10 or 11 spot this week. So I think you want to play him. Yeah, play all your Cowboys. They're going to score a bunch of points. The New York Giants, let's see. Daniel Jones looked great again last week. 4 touchdowns and a really good performance. They get Sterling Shepard back this week. I like the way this team is trending, especially offensively for fantasy purposes. I probably wouldn't play Daniel Jones this week. He's not in my top of the list, need to stream quarterbacks. But the rest of my Giants weapons, I know this sounds silly. I don't really want to play Jones, but I want to play the rest of his weapons. But Barkley, I think you definitely, come on, you're playing Barkley. But I think you play Sterling Shepard this week. Coming back his first week from the concussion, I think you play Sterling Shepard. I think you play Golden Tate. And you definitely play Evan Ingram. So this is one of those games where I really think that pretty much every guy that's fantasy viable needs to be in your lineup for both of these teams. Outside of the guys I mentioned, I don't think there's guys I really want to play unless you have to. As a last-minute pivot for an injury, guys like Darius Slayton, someone like that. Anybody on the Giants outside of, Tate, Shepard, and Ingram, I wouldn't be looking at as much of anything but a dart throw. But really, go ahead and play your Cowboys, play your Giants. Have a lot of fun on Monday night watching this game, watching those points stack up. I love this when I'm going to be down in a few games, probably heading into Monday night. I've got a decent amount of shares in the Cowboys. I've got a couple of shares in the Giants. And, well, first of all, if I'm not down in any games going into Monday, great, which means I blew some people out. Definitely might happen. But in all likelihood, I'm going to be down in a few games heading into Monday night, and that is awesome. Going to get the popcorn out and enjoy the game. I like that anxiety, that edge of your seat, watching your points tally up, seeing what you need, and then you get that one play that gives you the W. That's the best feeling, man. You're like, oh, all right, babe, I need just 2.8 more points. And then, bam, that screen pass gets floated out there, and there goes Zeke for 40 yards, and you get the W, and you just enjoy a nice victory shot, and that's it. You start getting ready for next week, right? And that's what we're going to do. We're going to take a nice victory shot, and then we're going to get ready for next week here, folks. So that's going to do it. That's the end of the games here, week 9. Oh, I hope you have your lineups ready to go. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and enjoy football Sunday, everybody. It's going to be a great week. We're going to have a lot of fun. Hopefully we pick up a lot of wins, and hopefully we continue our march towards the playoffs. All right, everybody, I'm going to sign off. This, again, is Jim Neander for the GOAT Fantasy Football Podcast. Watch the videos on YouTube. Like them, share them, subscribe to the channel, please, and go ahead and find us on Twitter at GOATFF Podcast. Again, that's at GOATFF Podcast. You can also hit me up at Jim Neander. All right, y'all, have a great weekend. We'll see you next time.